Welcome to the Scoop World Order. I've got probably my favorite defensive player that I had as a teammate, and a guy that I've been chasing. He's been on vacation. He has his own podcast. The great, and I mean great, AJ Hawk. AJ, how are you today, my man?
Oh, I'm doing great. Good to be on here with you finally. Sorry, it took me a little while to finally make it. We had a weird month of July. The first 3 weeks were kind of all over the place with my four little kids and running around and trying to get things situated. But now I'm here, so I'm excited.
Dude, you never have to apologize to me, man. I get it. I have one kid and a wife, and that's hard enough. Four and vacations and COVID and no school, and I get it. Like, you don't have to apologize to me at all for that. But I'm glad to have you. Hopefully you'll be a frequent flyer with the Scoop World Order. But let's get into it right away. The one thing I love to find out with all of you guys when I interview is, when you were coming out of high school, you're lightly, there's always like the urban legend, lightly recruited. You could have been a fullback at Youngstown State. What other schools were you considering before you pulled the trigger on Ohio State? Was it always Ohio State, or did you visit somewhere and say, this place, I can see myself here? Tell us a little bit about your recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, I went on some recruiting trips early on that weren't for me. It was for my brother. So my brother was 2 years older than me.
Yep.
I played with him my freshman and sophomore year in high school. He was the quarterback, and he was recruited by schools like Minnesota, Northwestern, OU, Miami of Ohio, schools like that. Indiana was on him for a while, Purdue. And so I got to go on a lot of those like unofficial visits with him and for the spring game and see all the facilities and do all that. And I think they might have been aware that I had played, but no, there was no like interest really at the time when I was young, freshman, sophomore. And basically up after that, though, I was just waiting on Ohio State to give me an offer. That's all I was doing. That's everything I did was trying to get an offer from Coach Tressel and Ohio State. And I went to camp going into my senior year of high school. I went to the camp like in June that they have, the big camp. There's 1,000 kids there probably. And at the end of that, Coach Tressel pulled me in his office and gave me an unofficial offer, a verbal offer to me. And I tried to accept it right then and there. And he's like, no, just go talk to your parents, everything. Make sure you talk it over with them. I'm like, yeah, trust me, they're good. They'll probably disown me if I tried to say no to this. So I'm going to let you know. I'll call you when we get home. We're going to drive home an hour and 20 minutes. And I'll let you know that, yes, don't give my spot up. Like I am committed. And so it was all that. But up until then, I guess the only other school, like my brother was at Miami of Ohio at the time. I would have definitely gone to Miami. That was a big possibility for me. And then right before Ohio State came in, Penn State offered me. It was really my only other like big school, Big Ten offer, I guess, at the time. And I took a visit there, I remember, an unofficial, and went and saw everything. And I loved it. It was cool, but it didn't feel like home. It didn't feel like Ohio State. Like I grew up in Centerville, Ohio. I knew if Ohio State ever offered me, I'm going 100%. So it wasn't like a tough decision on my part at all.
Do you feel any extra pressure picking Ohio State when you're a kid from Centerville? I'm just, because that was something I always, because people, they're always get obsessed with star ratings and national recruiting, and like for me, it was a thing where the Ohio State offer is a two-way. It can swing both ways, because if you go there and you don't produce and you don't have the career that you expect and hope, obviously you had an astronomically great career, but do you feel that pressure? Like, you don't want to be that guy that goes back home and that used to be AJ Hawk, you should never get that offer. Like, is that ever in your head?
Luckily it wasn't. If I was a little bit older, maybe like as I got older, I started thinking about things like that, I guess. But when I was young, I was so naive. I was just excited, man. I was excited. Ohio State gave me an offer. I had no expectations. I didn't know if I was going to redshirt. I didn't know anything. I was just going. I didn't know anything about the roster. I mean, I knew the guys I watched on TV, the guys you look up to, you say, okay, these are celebrities I've been watching, and now I'm in the same locker room as them. So I just wanted a chance. That's all I cared about. And luckily I never got into, especially when I was in college, I was super naive to everything going on around me. I didn't really worry about it. I was having a good time with the guys I came in with, guys like Bobby Carpenter, Anthony Schlegel, and guys like James Laurinaitis came in. He was a freshman my senior year. We were just having fun, man, and trying to win a bunch of games. So I never really gave much thought to all the outside pressure. I think it's different now. We know that with social media. Social media wasn't around then. I mean, Facebook was going on. I wasn't messing around with Facebook at the time. But I never really gave it much thought. And then as I got older and I was in the league, I never really worried about it, but I definitely was more aware of what was going on around me and outside the facility and what guys, I guess, expectations and all of that. But when I was in college, man, no, I didn't think about that. But I definitely, when I've gone back to games then, when I was in the league, I would watch it and I would be nervous for the guys on the field. I'm like, geez, like, do these guys know how important every single play is? Like, one bad play could have a domino effect. And like, if we don't win, then the coaches get fired and then their families are out. They're all looking for new gigs. They got to move. Like if a coach gets fired in college football or the NFL, whatever, it affects a ton of people, not just that guy and his family. It affects all the assistants, their families, all the players, the recruits. And I start thinking about that as I get older now. When I watch them play, I get nervous for these guys. And I just hope that they're as naive as I was and they don't really worry about it.
Yeah, it was funny because I always thought, because I mean, there was a period in 2004, man, where I mean, Bowles came to me and Nick and Rob, and basically it was a meeting after Iowa where it was like, basically it was like, what do we need to do to be better? And I mean, you could tell by like his tone and his, like, I mean, his job was threatened. I mean, we were 3-3, man. It was not, and like Rob was like, I mean, fellas are gonna pick this shit up, and we can't be. And like, you feel that weight just because, at Ohio State, man, like if like the year Luke, like in 2013 when our defense wasn't very good, I mean, his kids go to school and they get bullied because they just parrot what the dads say, oh, fickle socks or whatever. It's just like, when you coach at Ohio State, the salary's great, but like a lot of the ancillary stuff that you don't think about where, like in 11, like, cause I worked for Luke. It was funny. I worked for Tressel. And, Truss got whacked. I worked for Luke. And Luke got, reassigned to coordinator. And I worked for Urban. So, I saw, all the coaches pack their offices up after 2011. Like, I mean, it is, it's sobering because a lot, guys like Jim Haycock have been there for, 15. Like, he worked for Cooper. And I love Jim Haycock to death. He's awesome. But it's, it's sobering when you think about some of that stuff. So, moving from there, you show up in 2002. Talk a little bit about, when did you really think you could first really play at Ohio State at a high level? I sent you the clip about Andy, and he's running scout team inside run against Orlando, and Orlando pulls out. It's like a semi truck pulling out to hit you, and you're just crushes him like a bug. And then, he got his feet under him, did a couple of scrimmages, and felt really good. Tell me, how was your progression in 2002?
Well, I mean, it's funny to hear Andy talk about that, how Orlando just runs right through him, and he's thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. And I was like, yeah. Andy, you stepped in from day one as a starter and were the man right away. Andy was the centerpiece of that defense. So it's funny hearing him say that. I remember watching everything that he did. And then as I got to know him, when I was in school, I was actually taking a class out of maybe my junior year. And I hear the teacher is first day calling roll, and she's like, Andy Katzenmoyer. He's like, here. And he's sitting in the back, and I look around, and I see him. I'm like, oh, hey, what's up, man? And Andy was in one of my classes because he had come back to school, and I think he was, you can come back and be a GA, and they'll pay for your schooling still from your scholarship. And he was doing all that. And I got to know him and play golf with him, which he was a hell of a golfer back then. I don't know if he plays as much anymore. But when I first came in, like I said, I had no expectations. I didn't know what was going on. I was just trying to stay quiet and do my thing and prove to those older guys that I belong. Because in my freshman year, we came in, went 14-0, won the national championship. So we had studs on that team. That junior, senior class at the time, Donnie Nicky, Mike Doss, Kenny Peterson, Will Smith. I mean, Tim Anderson was a junior that my freshman year. Just absolute monsters everywhere you look. And those guys didn't mess around. They worked and they got after it. So I came in early on and just wanted to keep my head down. And I'm sure no one even knew I was on the team for a while, that all June and July when I was doing workouts with all of them. But then I think once camp started and it was old school, we had freshman camp back then. I think that was the last year that they were able to do freshman camp. So we were there for 4 or 5 days banging on each other before the vets got in. And it was not an easy thing. But luckily the high school I came from at Centerville, it was serious. Every June and July, workout started at 5:15 in the morning. You'd show up at 4:30 to start everything. You go kill yourself in the weight room for 3 hours, and then you go on the track for another 2.5 and almost die every single day. So that's what I had come from. So I was used to stuff like that. But I think early on in camp, I remember, I don't know who I hit, but it was some kind of like live scrimmage type thing, but it was on the practice field, and they ran a tear screen down the line. And luckily I read it early. I think I slipped a block and I annihilated somebody, whoever the receiver was. I can't think of who it was, but it was just one of those plays that set up beautifully for me just to have a kill shot on somebody. Now when I look back on it, there's no way like they would want you taking that shot now in practice. Like it was a hit that in a game you'd be penalized for, and if it was in the league, you'd be fined. But I was celebrated. Everyone jumped on my back. We watched it in the team meeting room. Everyone loved it. Like it was awesome. And so that kind of got me going. That was early in camp, maybe the first week that the vets were there. That got me at least feeling pretty good. And then I think it was my very first game against Washington State. I got thrown in towards the end of the game. We were up pretty good, and Cliff Kingsbury was scrambling, and that's another hit. Would be fined in the league and absolutely maybe ejected now. He was scrambling near our sideline, and I hit him as he released the ball. He had probably 1 foot out of bounds, and I have a picture of it too that someone sent me. Like my elbows up, trying to hit him in the neck and everything, and I just planted him right on the sidelines there as he's getting rid of the ball. And I remember like the crowd was even like, ooh, like they made a noise, and that felt good. And so then that kind of settled me in. I got a few good shots in, and I felt pretty good about it. And then I was like, all right, well, hopefully, like it wasn't like something that like popped in my brain thinking, oh, I can actually do this. I just felt like, all right, let's keep going. Let's try to get some more kill shots out here.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you get like, once you get like going, it's like, it's still just football. You know, I mean, it's at a bigger stage, a bigger crowd, but it's still just about technique and reading your keys and, you know, pre-snap, you know, checking, you know, any tells that you got from the film. Like it's still football. Like I always tell, like when I was coaching, I'd always tell young kids that are, you know, starting their first game or whatever, I was like, dude, just treat it like it's inside run on Tuesday. Same thing. It's like, because I mean, if you're like, that's what I tell guys. So they're like, I do inside run against, you know, AJ and Bobby and Kudla, and those guys are better than anybody else I'm going to go against. Like you guys are better than Chad Greenway, Abdul Hodge, Woodley, like any of those guys. I was like, yeah, so you're already prepared. Don't let all the ancillary stuff, you know, mix you up, because some guys, they get scared when the lights come on, but like there's no reason to. So once you've done it in practice, I mean, at a high level, then you know you can really do it.
I always told guys like, or I thought to myself like, hey, yeah, maybe in college I may have been watching these guys play on TV for the last couple of years when I was in high school, but hey, they were in high school at one point too. Like they all came from high school, and they had their first year, their first day on a college campus, but they're humans. They came from high school. And so I said the same thing when I was in the league. I'm like, they always want to say, oh, it's business up here, man. Guys trying to feed their families. I'm like, yeah, but this guy was a college player too. Like he was in the same position as me at one point. So you just try to look at it that way. But yeah, you can definitely freak yourself out if you start to think about too many things going on and what happens here if I make a mistake or I have a mental error here. I'm like, oh, do not do that, because no one plays well when you're doing that, when you're worried about what's going to happen to you if something goes wrong.
Yeah, and it's something like, even like Brandon Brooks for the Eagles, who's the highest paid guard in the NFL, like he had an anxiety attack the same week that, you know, on the sideline, the same week that he signed the richest deal in history. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't understand that, because I was like, you know, I was always a minimum guy in the league, and it's like, if I signed the biggest deal ever, that means I can't get cut. I'm probably going to see at least, you know, 70% of this money. I was like, I'd be like, I can't wait to get out there and go ball, because it's like, you know, when you're, you know, towards the end or the lower part of the roster, it's like guys get brought in and cut in the middle of the season, and it's different when you're the highest paid guy. But like, he literally couldn't even play because he was so nervous about it. And it's like, I've seen guys that just can't do it in the shoe or with the bright lights on. And I was just curious as to your thoughts on that. So we'll switch gears to your second year. You became the starting Will. You know, we still had Turbo. We still had you know, like you and Bobby, like by the end of the year, were playing a ton. But talk to me a little bit about that year, because that was a funky year, because, you know, the Maurice thing was hanging out there, preseason like number 1 or 2, returning champions, 20 starters back, whatever. Talk to me a little bit about that year, the first year that you really became a force for the team.
Well, yeah, it was a weird off season to where, yeah, we won the national championship, came back. I mean, the game was on Monday. Maybe is the game always on Monday? Maybe it was back then, even like a Monday night. But we flew back right away, and I had to go to class a couple days later. And there's all this stuff. We had a celebration in the shoe, see Grant, St. Carmen, Ohio, and kind of stamped himself as an absolute legend because we'd all heard sing Carmen, Ohio a lot, but he sang it in front of the whole stadium at our celebration thing. And I backed C up my whole freshman year, so he was the man. What a great player, great dude, great guy to room with during camp that year, my freshman year. But yeah, my second year, you mentioned Turbo. Robert Reynolds was in there playing Sam. Bobby played a lot at Sam. Freddie Puggich was playing at Mike a little bit. DeAndrea was stepping in. It was a little bit of rotation there in the middle. But man, a D line in front of me was ridiculous. Tim Anderson, Will Smith, Simon Frazier's out there, a ton of other guys that
D-Man. Don't forget D-Man.
D-Man was the
D-Man's
best.
my boy, man. I love
D-Man went to Minnesota. I remember playing against D-Man in the league, and I love that guy. Like, just such a stud, such a gamer too.
Darian Scott, for any of the people that don't know D-Man's nickname.
Yeah, Darian Scott, like such a nice guy, and does not look. If you looked at him, you'd be like, "Ooh, okay, it's a big, strong guy." And then you talk to him, and he's the man, and he's such a nice dude, and always is trying to help out during games. Want to make sure he's doing his job, keeping linemen off you. So yeah, there were studs all around us, and we had a lot of talent. Craig Krenzel coming back at the quarterback position. I think we were number 1 preseason, which I always thought, like, who cares? Like, okay, when people get mad that they're not number 1 or they're not in the top 5, I'm like, who cares? Does the preseason poll ever matter? Like, all that matters is the postseason poll. If we go win all of our games, we'll be number 1. Who cares? Just win every game. Like, that's all you can try to do. And so I never cared about that too much. But yeah, it's stepping in and going into a season knowing that I was most likely going to start was cool. Like, I never got comfortable. I guess I knew, like, okay, I got to perform now, and I got to make sure I stay in the lineup, stay healthy, and I'm accountable to my teammates. But like I said before, I had some help from some awesome guys around me that made my life a lot easier.
It's so funny because, like, with Andy, I mentioned, because he stepped onto, like, a loaded roster. And, I mean, he's got Luke in front of him, Winfield Garnett, Vrabel, Finkus, and he was an animal. I mean, he was a monster. But then the next year, those guys were all gone. Like, I think Garnett might have been back, but the other 3 were gone. So it's like, and he loves Luke. I mean, obviously everybody loves Luke. Luke's the best. But he's like, I'm like, dude, having Luke as your nose guard, having a guy who's like that tough, who can, like, you know how it is. Like, when you have a guy that blocks for you, that's what Bullseye is. Like, I never thought of it this way. It was like, the D linemen in our defense block for the linebackers. So it's like, when you have guys that do their jobs like Tim Anderson, who's not going to be, getting 15 sacks, but he's got to keep you clean so that you can go make plays. Like, it's a luxury when you have guys that do it. You have a guy like D-Man who can rush the passer as a 3 technique. He played end and he shifted in so Simon could come in. It was really cool. By the end of the year, like, K-State, you and Bobby were playing a ton. And then we go into 2004, we're not as good. We lose a bunch of guys. So we're just going to skip that year. So we're going to go 2005. We have Troy suspended. We beat Miami of Ohio. Let's go to the Texas game. Was the loudest moment in your career, maybe other than save the Miami game, because that's just an anomaly, in the shoe when you had the pick against Texas?
Yeah, I think so. And I remember when I got the pick, like, I remember the place kind of erupting. And then when you watch the film, like the player's copy, the All-22 or whatever, I remember watching it the next day, or a couple years before, when Mark Snyder was my linebacker coach. We would watch guys make plays, and he'd be like, "Hey, look at this. I love when the camera shakes. It's a big play when the camera shakes, like the actual camera that they're filming for us to watch as players, the All-22, and you could see the camera shaking." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And I remember now, after that Texas pick, unfortunately, we were unable to win that game, but I felt it in person in the moment when the crowd was going crazy. But then we watched that one, and that was one of the plays where, like, the crowd made that All-22 camera shake. And then at the end of that run, I got a pick off of Vince. I think Kudla, a bunch of guys had great pressure on him, and I cut back across the field, and I got jacked by Jamal Charles. He came out of nowhere and got me and blasted me. I remember later, people were like, "Oh, man, he really got you." I'm like, "I don't care. What do you mean? I was returning a pick. I'm trying to score." And this dude came out. I give him credit. He got me good, but I had to act like it didn't hurt. I think I held the ball up and tried to jump up real quick and act like it didn't hurt at all, and it was nasty. It did not feel good at all. He got me right in the side of the head, but luckily I had enough adrenaline. I felt okay about it.
And it's funny because back then, like Jamal Charles wasn't thought of as like what he was like in his NFL career when he was like,
Yeah.
you know, as good of a running back as there was for a short period in the league when he was with the Chiefs, man. He was pouring it on, and he was just kind of like, they had like Selvin Young, and
They were loaded, man.
D tackle in the league. He was a good player, but you know, he wasn't thought of like that. But yeah, that was that the most disappointed you've ever been after a game?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's tough to like rank them. That one was brutal. Our Penn State loss my senior year was brutal as well. But yeah, I would say because there was so much hype leading up to it. I remember talking about it, having to do interviews during training camp that leading up to that game, and when it wasn't even our first game, but they were always asking us about Texas, what's it going to be like? And then it just as the buildup got to that game, and it was a night game in the shoe, it was just a special thing to be a part of. Yeah, it was super disappointing. But then I started thinking like, all right, I tried to say, okay, if let's just win out, we'll get back to where we want to be. Unfortunately, we were unable to win out, but it just shows you how difficult it really is. I mean, I've told the story before to different people. My freshman year, I was after we won it all, I'm standing there on the 50-yard line with guys. I'm like, this is awesome. Let's come. We're going to go do this again next year. I'm doing it for 3 more years. We're going to be back here in a national championship. But I never was able to get back, man. It's not easy to do.
No, that's why I was really happy that you got your Super Bowl. So I felt so bad your senior year, because I tell people, I'm like, look, I know we made it in 06 and we're undefeated, but like we didn't, like, our strength of schedule was like an A+ in 05, and it was like a D in 06. Like, I mean, just being real, like we played Texas, but they didn't have, it wasn't Vince Young national champion Texas. It was 7-5 Texas. Like that was like literally they played in the Alamo Bowl against Iowa that year. They didn't go beat USC, and like it wasn't the same Texas. Like I evaluate the players, not the jersey. So, and I apologize. Like Penn State, your boy Chucky, or my little cardio king, Chucky Norman, he got picked up by their one juiced up D tackle and he threw him into my knee, man. It crushed me. Like I couldn't plant my knee. Like I literally, like, it came out of the slot because I tore my MCL like completely. Then I tried to put a sleeve on and run, and like I'd get in a stance and it would just pop out of the socket. And I'm like, you know, I did that, like broke my heart, because I was like, you know, I always took the needle for you guys. I was never going to miss a game. And it was like, I literally couldn't play. My knee came out of the socket. Like I was like, you know, so I was out. So they had to put like Robbie, they put like John Conroy in, and they put Robbie in, and then they put Boone in the second half. And I was like, so, yeah, it sucks. Because like I played Tom the year before and I shut him out. Like he didn't have a sack against me, bounced him on the turf a few times. And then the next year, I was really looking forward to playing him, because all of a sudden he was getting all this hype. And I was like, that's the same guy I killed last year. And it's like, you know, in 04 when we sucked, I remember going against that guy and like he didn't get a sniff. And then the next year he's like, oh, he's an All-American. And I was like, what? I was like, the same dude. Like, and I just, that was the game of all the games that crushed me. It was Penn State, because like I was so excited to play. I'd broken my foot against Iowa, and you know I had to practice with a broken foot, which sucked. And they injected me before the game, and my foot was numb, and I was like, oh my god, this is like having a new foot. It's unbelievable. I know it's gonna kill after it wears off, but like my foot doesn't hurt. I was like, this is amazing. So I was like so excited to actually be able to play and not be in pain. And because they were like limiting my practice reps and stuff, so it wouldn't be completely inflamed or be worse. But like they shot me up before that game, and I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. It's like, oh my god. It's like it was like having like a limitless pill for your body. I was so happy. But it's like, you know, it's funny. I remember so I was out for like 3 weeks with that, and then I remember like, you know, I still had a broken foot, but my knee healed up, which was good. So like coming down the stretch, I was getting shot up again for every game. Then like I remember like at Michigan in their little terrible locker room, I was in there getting ready to get my injection, and the injection, I think it's Tortal, whatever it was, it felt like they're shooting like fire into my foot. It hurts like hell. So I would put a towel so I couldn't see the needle, and I'd bite a towel because it hurts so damn bad. And they would put that plunger in. I'd be like, oh my god. And Bobby came in. He's like, yes, do it. You know, like it's like the, you know, like Varsity Blues or something, or the program. He had a bunch of good lines, and I was laughing. But I was like, dude, like I literally said, I was like, if I don't, you know, take this needle and I have to sit out and I got to watch, you know, if something happens and we lose, you know, we already lost 2 and I couldn't play for 3 months, and I got to send like Nick and Rob and you out with a loss to Michigan. I was like, I just want to be able to live with myself. I'm like, fuck it. I was like, shoot me up. I don't care. I'll deal with it. I'll deal with the other stuff later. But now that we're there and we're in that 05 locker room at Michigan, tell me about the Eddie George speech.
Oh man, it was awesome. It was amazing. I saw Eddie came. There's a thing called the Sonny Younger Banquet that my high school does to honor a guy who died in Vietnam from Centerville.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different speakers every year. And I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, my brother, a lot of times now they have my brother kind of MC it and run it, and we'll ask the guests questions if it's someone that's not just going to give like just a 45-minute keynote speech. And Eddie came 4 or 5 years ago, I believe. And afterwards, my brother actually knew about the speech. And so he asked Eddie about it. He was like, man, I was all like, I was going to go and just kind of have a normal talk and just tell him, how special it was and all this. But then he said he walked out during warm-ups or before he spoke to us, and some fans were yelling at him, giving him a hard time. He started yelling back at some fans in the stands. And he's like, I just got all pissed off. And then I just came in the locker room and just kind of went off a little bit. And that was what it was. Like, we were so juiced. Like, Eddie is a pretty calm guy, quiet. And, man, you could just feel how passionate he was, how much he cared about Ohio State still. I'm like, this dude's had an amazing NFL career. He's back here, and you can tell he cares this much about this game and what we're doing. And so, yeah, you feel like, okay, we have like an obligation. We got to go out and find a way to win. There's a lot of people counting on us. And it was amazing. And then, believe me, it didn't it was touch and go for a while. That was not a blowout by any means for us. We had to
God, no. Dude, we were down like 9 points with like 7 minutes to go. I remember I was sitting on the bench looking at the clock, and I was like, they had like a few losses. They actually beat the Penn State team that beat us, but like they got killed by or no, that was in 05. But they had a bunch of losses. Like, they went to the Alamo Bowl. Like, we've been to the Alamo Bowl. It's not the same as going to the Fiesta Bowl. It's a huge difference. Like, you get a purple MasterCard coat instead of a PlayStation. It's a big difference, and like I remember, because like I love me some Troy Smith. Oh my God. Like, Troy in that last quarter, it was as good a football as I've ever seen anybody play at Ohio State. Because I mean, him and Santonio and Gonzo with that catch, because like right away we lose Bobby. I mean, Jake Long breaks Bobby at half, so Bobby's out. Then we got to put James in, and and you and Schlegel kind of hold it down, and we played nickel for a lot of the game. Because it was funny, I asked James about that when I interviewed him on the SWO, and he was like, yeah, people always bring that up, but I only played like 15 plays. I was like, yeah, so we went nickel the whole game. But you don't have to tell that. You can say you played 75 plays and 8 sacks and, whatever. But it was, talk a little bit about your relief when you're a senior captain and you get to walk off that field as a winner and you never have to play Michigan again.
Yeah, I guess you would say like there's a lot of relief there, because as you mentioned, that game wasn't looking great for us. We knew like, hey, we got to find a way. Like, we're going to find a way to win this thing. But as the time was ticking down, I'm like, I didn't want to let that thought creep into my mind. Like, oh man, like, can you imagine losing my senior year at Michigan? That'd be brutal. Like, I just can't imagine that happening. So luckily we found a way. And you mentioned Troy, Santonio, the whole offense. I mean, it was unbelievable what they're able to do. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of relief, I think, and it shows how stupid I was. I still laugh sometimes at how dumb I was on the field. I'm standing there talking to somebody after the game. We were kind of close to the sidelines. Michigan, the stands are pretty close, and there's a group of Ohio State fans start yelling, one more year. And I was like, oh, sorry, guys. I'm a senior, guys. Sorry, I don't have a. And then I turn around, I look over my shoulder, and Santonio is sitting right behind me. Santonio has a year of eligibility left.
Yeah, he's like, later, guys. Like,
I was like, oh, they weren't chanting at me, obviously. And Santonio, I know Tone's leaving. He redshirted me.
He's out.
He's out of here. Now. Why would he? He's definitely gonna be out of here. And then I like, it was one of those things like, you see somebody waving and you wave at them and you realize they're waving at somebody next to you. And you don't know. That's basically what it was on the Michigan field before I went in the locker room. So that was one of the last memories I have on the field there at Michigan.
Yeah, but it's because I had to go, like 2 years later, I went up there as I was in your shoes. I was the captain. It was weird because like I lost so many guys that were like my homies in 05, 06, because like Robbie's like one of my favorite human beings ever. We used to call him Big Rube because he took over the C. Grant role singing Carmen. So he was Ruben Studdard, Big Rube. And I loved, like, Nick was so good. Like, I mean, lose those guys. Then the next year I lose Doug and TJ, lose Troy, Gonzo, Pitt. Like, a lot. Basically, I was the only guy left from my senior class, or from my recruiting class. Like, my senior, I was the only guy left. So it was like, I go up there and I'm like, you're lying if you're not scared to lose that game. Like, I mean, it's just like, you just don't want to deal with it for the rest of your life. And that was the big thing Eddie talked about, is like losing the 95 games. Like, he won the Heisman and everything, but it's like they could have won the national championship, and they lose that game, and some running back no one's ever heard of outshined him that day. And like that like lives in infamy forever. And it's like, you know, that it's just weird because at Ohio State, you never know when your moment is. Like, I mean, for better or worse, like I tell people, they'll remember you for your biggest moment. Like, I can say the name Ryan Hamby, people think of one thing. I can say Jake Ballard, people think of another thing. It's like Zach Bourne, people think of one thing. It's like, you know, Troy, I mean, unfairly gets blamed for the Florida game, like constantly. It's just, that's how it is. And that's probably the thing that makes you the most nervous about it. But going up there and winning as a senior captain and like doing it up there, when in the 90s we didn't win up there very often. Like when we were growing up, it was like we never went up there, and it feels good. So fast forward to the bowl game. Obviously, you're dating your now wife Laura. You know, obviously her her brother's Brady, who I love Brady. Like I wanted him to come here. I remember we had senior advanced camp at Ohio State, and Brady came. Brady was so big time that he came for like the first day, and then he left because he went to a Whitesnake concert. And like a guy like me, like I'm like scratching and clawing to get an offer, and Brady's like, I'm not gonna go to the second day, because advanced camp is like the top 30 guys, and that's it. It's like an invite only camp. I'm sure they had it for you guys too. It's like good on good, evaluation, city. A lot of guys get offered based on advanced camp. They don't have that anymore. It's illegal now. But Brady like showed up and went to the Whitesnake concert and didn't show up to day 2. And I was like, probably not going to get him, but that's kind of a power move. It's kind of cool. So what were your thoughts leading up to Notre Dame? I mean, it's like, they had the fatter tuna, Charlie Weiss, as their head coach, and he was boisterous. And, they almost beat USC. But just going into that game with kind of your unique situation, talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, man, it was weird. So luckily my wife now 14 years and 4 kids, but we were early on in our relationship. We basically had been together for 3 months maybe before that game, and I'd never really met Brady. I didn't meet Brady until
Christmas. You sacked him? Please tell me it's when you sacked him. It was the first time you met Brady. Please.
A couple days before.
A
couple days before I met Brady.
At the FCA breakfast?
No, I should say a couple of weeks before. So
okay.
Brady came back in town we had a little like 4-day break, I think, for Christmas. And I was in Columbus visiting Laura, my girlfriend at the time, wife now. And I took part in their family kind of Christmas deal. And we rode around in her cousin's van, went around to a couple of different, their family and their friends' houses. And me and Brady were cool. Like, it was always kind of weird where we knew we were going to play each other in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks. But I've always got along with Brady very well. I do even get along with him great now. He's coming in town here in a couple of days to Ohio. He lives in Florida. But, it was not awkward or weird. I mean, it just what was weird was when Brady and I would be together and we would go to we went to go to their family friend's house for that night when I first met him. Everyone else was all weird. They're like, oh, what do you guys do? Oh, you guys can't talk to each other. Well, you're not allowed to hang out around each other. I'm like, all right, okay. We'll be fine. Yeah. And we were cool. And then I actually saw him the week of the game. I think Laura came and picked me up at the hotel when we had some off time at night, and we went to a Subway or something and ate somewhere. And she got Brady too, because she's the oldest of 3, and she's kind of been like Brady's mom forever. She always taking care of him and wanting to get us together and hang out and stuff. And then we didn't know anything leading up to the game that anyone would talk about it or care about it. My wife wore this half and half jersey that some guy just gave her. Some guy's like, hey, I got this. I made this for you. It's kind of what I do. And she's like, she asked me, should I wear it? I'm like, all right, sure. Yeah, that's cool. Whatever. I don't know. And all of a sudden they showed her on camera a bunch, and she wasn't sure how to feel when Brady started getting hit a little bit. And especially when I got to sack him a few times, she obviously was torn. First off, she'd only known me for about 3 or 4 months. So you should be rooting for your brother. What do you mean? You can say, cool, I hope AJ does okay, but I want my brother to win. I want Notre Dame to win. I want my brother to be healthy. I'm like, that's what you should be thinking. And that probably was what she was thinking. But ever since then, people like to ask us about it. If me and Brady are together, Brady's awesome about it. He's signed. There's pictures of me hitting him, and then he'll sign the pictures. He doesn't care. And we get along great. We co-host radio shows on Sirius a lot together and hang out all the time. He's got a big charity golf event coming up that I'm going to play in. But yeah, it was leading up to it was kind of weird, and especially leading up to that game. Bobby Carpenter was kind of on the fence whether he was going to play or not early that week in practice. I think he kind of knew he wasn't going to be able to his leg or shin that he kind of broke wasn't ever going to be healthy enough to play in the game. But he was kind of hanging around practice early on, acting like trying to give it a go. He wasn't able to play, so James is making the start there. It's a big deal. And even though James said he only played 15 plays or so in that Michigan game, he played well and was able to obviously not be a big liability for us. So we knew early on James was going to be a stud. Like I knew right away that James would be a stud. But yeah, that game going in against Charlie Weiss, that's one thing I think I said after the game in the post-game press conference. They kept asking us leading up to the game, how do you beat a Charlie Weiss team that has 3 weeks to prepare? Like, how do you do this? And I never said anything. Then after the game, I was like, I mentioned that, hey, everyone kept asking me, how do you beat a Charlie Weiss team? And the whole time I'm thinking, how in the hell do you beat a Jim Tressel coach team? You only give them 3 weeks to prepare. Are you kidding me? Like we were 4-0 at my time in bowl games at Ohio State. And I'm like, it's because Coach Tressel knows what to do. He knows how to practice you. He knows what kind of plan to put in place. And so I was trying to like stand up for Coach Tressel a little bit, even though he didn't. I mean, he's the man, one of the greatest guys of all time. But it was definitely good to win that one. I never felt like it was in jeopardy for us. I know it was close at times a little bit. But man, the offense played so well. Defense played pretty well for the most part. Their offense was pretty prolific. But it definitely felt good to win because I'm friends with a decent amount of those guys that Brady played with at the time. I hung out with them, a big group of them. Brady was still in school, so I actually went – that was my senior year, Brady's junior year. We played in the bowl game. Then I went to Brady's spring game 3-4 months later at Notre Dame and watched and then hung out with Brady after the game and all of his Notre Dame buddies, and we're talking about the Fiesta Bowl and joking about it and stuff. But I hung out with like 30 of his teammates at all those Notre Dame bars, and we're taking bottles from behind the bar, chugging bottles together, hanging out. Like, it was great, man. We had a great time. I got a great Notre Dame experience. That's my only real Notre Dame experience I have is going to the spring game and then hanging out till 4:30 in the morning with Brady and his college buddies, and they were all super cool.
Yeah, and it's funny because I met a bunch of those guys when I was in the league because I met Ryan Harris, the one guard guy that's killing, Dan Santucci, Zibby. Like Zibby and I, we were both at the Barlow Sports, and like one of the greatest guys in the world. Like I saw him after a game when we played rookie year, and I mean just like one of the most awesome dudes in the world. But it's like weird, like and even like even if you go to Michigan, I mean I'm sure you played with Charles Woodson, and I played with Jake Long in Miami, and like Jake is like one of the greatest guys, and so is Henny. Like I mean they're just like really good guys. Like I mean I joke, I was like if you guys would have been in like an Ohio State, I was like Jake Long would have been like one of my boys. Like he's just he's a guy that like signed for $60 million guaranteed, and he chewed Grizzly, drove an F-250. It's like he could have had a helicopter take him to practice in Miami, but it's like he's still just a big kind of hillbilly from Michigan, and he was always great with me. And like you don't always bring it up because the one thing he did ask, he's like, what was it like to win the 06 game? I was like, well, pretty fun. I was like, it's better than losing it, but you don't like rub it in, and because like most of us are just dudes. Like we've been through the highs and lows of football, and I tell people anybody that's been in this game for any amount of time is going to have some big highs and you're going to have some big lows. Like you're going to lose some games, you're going to be in the dumps, and then you're going to win some big ones, and that's just how the game is, man. And it's refreshing. It's really cool to hear that. What was your favorite part of the Princess?
Oh man, the hotel out there. I still talk about that hotel. I don't know if can you even call it a hotel? I mean, resort. It's a resort. I think the smell, the fires that they had fires burning all the time. There's like a distinct smell. I still bring it up all the time. If someone's having a fire, and I think it smells a little bit like it did out in Scottsdale at the Scottsdale Princess Hotel Resort. Man, everything about the Scottsdale Princess, man. I was there three times, 3 out of my 4 in the Fiesta Bowl staying there. So it was like home to us. I was back there actually working when Ohio State played Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl and got blasted. I was with SiriusXM, and I did like their media days stuff, and I actually went by the Scottsdale, and it felt the same. It felt good. I felt like I had a game coming up in 5 or 6 days when I showed up, but I was 12 years too late.
Yeah, it was better than the Motel 6 that we stayed in on the Riverwalk for the Alamo Bowl. That's for sure.
There's a big difference in bowl games, isn't there? There's
Oh my
there's
God.
a different feel. Something about being in Scottsdale, playing the Fiesta Bowl. I feel like that's like where we were supposed to be. We should have been there 4 years out of all 4 years in college. I wish I would have played there.
Absolutely. And I actually really, like, once we were like got in the game, like we had a great game in the Alamo Bowl. Like it wasn't as exciting as a Fiesta Bowl, but we did kick the crap out of Oklahoma State. But it's weird when you're not home on Christmas. You know, that's like something that's when you know you've had a bad year, is when you're in like a hotel watching a James Bond marathon on Spike TV on Christmas Day. You're like, what are we doing? This sucks. We had to practice. It was cold. Like,
or you know what you do, or if you go down, man, we went to I think we stopped by some weird bar on Christmas Eve, and just to kind of check it out and see what was going on, and seeing the people that all of a sudden, I think it was me, Bobby Schlegs, a couple other guys were like, who goes to a bar on Christmas Eve? Who are these other people here? Like, we're here because we can't be home, but we almost felt bad for them. They seemed like they were having a good time, but it was like going to a bar on Christmas Eve at 9:30 at night it's a weird feeling. That's for sure.
Yeah. My favorite part about the Princess in 05 was every morning I would wake up, walk, put my sandals on, walk to like our breakfasts and meetings. And every morning I would walk by that pond, and that sign would be floating in the middle of the pond. And like, I knew that Bobby, who decided he wasn't playing, he probably had a really fun night. And that was almost like superstitious. I was like, God, I hope that sign's in the middle. And every day that sign, and there'd be like a sign that said like, there's like snapping turtles, ducks, and bass in the thing. It'd have like little pictures of them. And Bobby in the middle of the night would launch the sign into the middle of the lake. And I was like, okay, Bobby had a good night. And I just walk, eat my breakfast. And really, honestly, that's when people ask me what happened against the Florida Gators. I'm like, well, Bobby wasn't there to put the sign in the thing. That was like our lucky charm. Like I was like, we never lost a game when Bobby threw the sign in the middle of a little pond. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that?
Of course. Oh. Yeah. Believe me. I mean, if anyone had just saw that thing floating in the pond, they'd be like, oh, here you go. Okay. Bob. And they didn't know. They'd be like, yeah, why does Bobby keep doing this? Like, they would just know who did it.
It's superstition, man. It's like, I wish I had a video of him, because I always wondered like his technique. Does he throw like a javelin, or does he like heave it with two hands? But it was
he tried everything possible. I bet he tried every single style possible to try to get the most distance and get that thing as far as he possibly could.
Yeah, because it's like, once you do it one time, you're like, well, can I get it a little further out there the next time? And can I get a little further? It's like, Bobby's super competitive, man. He's not like the kind of guy that like, okay, I did it. Like, if he's running, he's like, can I do it 20 seconds faster this time? Or, like, if you're running distance or whatever, it's like, I was like, man, how does he do that? And me and Rob would always joke about that in like meetings and stuff. And I was like, oh, we won. Thank God for that sign.
Kirk, if you would have seen my freshman year, we went out, we were in the Fiesta Bowl. It's a national championship. That senior class, the junior class, like the first 2 or 3 days there, I don't think we had a curfew, or if it did, it was
no. Yeah,
2 or 3 a.m.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was just a freshman, I'm just like, okay, I think I was rooming with Nugent at the time. And I'm like, I'm just going to, bunker down in this awesome like room/villa they give us with a big old bathtub. And it was something like stuff I'd never seen before.
Bath salts.
Yeah. It was amazing. And I would come to breakfast the next day, and you would talk to like the seniors and stuff. They'd be like, oh, what'd you get into? I'm like, I don't know. I watched Survivor. Like you do, like you try to talk to them, and you realize like, no, these guys were having a good time. And what I learned from those dudes, like they were the true like throwbacks, where they played hard and they worked harder. Like they were not scared to. I think that's a big thing that team had. Like the team was so tight. Like I remember my freshman year, it's early September, and I'm at Olentangy Commons at some house party, and there's like 40 players there, like 50 players on the team. Like that, everyone hung out, and I was invited by the upperclassmen, and I'm like, they don't have to do that. They didn't have to reach out to me specifically and tell, hey, you should come by. And of course I did. And I was like, this is pretty cool, man, because they don't need to do that. There's no reason to. But those guys all really included everybody. Didn't ever want to leave anybody out. I think that stuff carries over to the field.
No, it absolutely does. And it was funny because like in 05, like we did the same thing. We didn't have curfew the first 2 nights. We're not playing for like 11 days, 10 days. I mean, we got out there on like, usually the day after Christmas, and then we it's funny they took that away. How you could like book your ticket and you get like a big check, and you can book a plane ticket for $200 and you get to keep like $900 on your check. Like they took all that away now.
Yeah, I flew out there my senior year. I actually flew out there with Laura, my wife now, and I think Bobby. I think my mother-in-law drove, or no, Nick, because I live with Nick. So my mother-in-law drove myself, Nick Mangold, and my wife now, girlfriend at the time. She drove us to the Columbus airport, and we waited in a super long line with a bunch of fans to go to the game.
That's hilarious. They're probably like, you're not on like the team charter or anything? It's like, no, man, I'd rather make the money. I don't want to fly on the team charter. It's like, you can take the team charter if you want, but you don't get the extra difference, which back in the day, that was like a big deal. Like, I mean, it's like actually $800. Well,
I had my dad on that. My dad traveled a lot for work. I was like, hey, can you find me a nice cheap flight out here to this game? He's like, sure. Yeah. And you're right. You get to keep probably, I don't know, I probably cleared $500-600 off of that.
Sure. It's free money, man. Well, you know, I don't want to keep you much longer because I'd love to do this again. Dude, you're awesome. You got to help me get Nick on, because Nick's the one guy. I'm like, Nick, you have barbecue sauce. I was like, my people, I mean, we've got thousands of people that are signed up for this site. Like, they'll buy your sauce. Like, get on here. You know, I know he's on TV and he's big time now, but like, I love Nick. Like, he's like the funniest guy. And like, he was so good. I still was joking with Dave Patterson. I was like, every time you went against him, you would bull rush him. He just put your face in the ground. Like every time. He's like, I know, it sucks. I mean, Dave, like I love Dave, and I was just like, he's like, I hated going against Nick. He's like, give me Doug or TJ or Mike Nee or something. It's like you go against Nick, it's like,
yeah, you know, that happened with me when I played Nick in the league a lot, because Nick was my roommate for 4 straight years. All through college, we grew up together basically. You know, he went to the Catholic school, I went to the public school, but I knew him forever. And he was on the Jets, and there's a couple times, where I felt like he was like toying with me. Like I'm trying to like disguise, like I'm not going to blitz or whatever. And he's like, I got you, big guy. Like he's like with hand on the ball, and he knows like what I'm doing. And then Nick would, it would be so frustrating. The guys where you'd be trying so hard, like to bowl him or get by him, do some kind of move. And you're just working so hard, and he's just super calm. He's like, all right, easy. Like he'd be like, all right, okay, all right. Like he would just kind of talk you through. I'm like, man, you're not even stressing at all about this. So yeah, I think Nick had that impact on a lot of people he played against.
Dude, yeah, he was the best. I'm getting him, getting Robbie. I'm just rounding up the crew. I had Nate Sally. Like there's just, you know, and the one guy who's my holy grail, who I'll never get, no one will ever get, is Chris Gamble. I asked Tress, I was like, when's the last time you heard from Gamble? He's like 15 years ago. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably not gonna be able to find him. But you know, I like getting, you know, some of you guys are a little more, I know you have your podcast, you're a little more under the radar with the local media, and like they just love hearing, you know, some of these stories are amazing, dude. And you know, like I said, I always liked you because you obviously were excellent as a player. You were always humble, quiet, and I always wish that, like, for one day, all the Ohio State fans could be dyslexic, because there were so many 47 jerseys, and I was 74, and I was like, if there was just one thing I could wish, that they all thought they were wearing my number instead of yours. I mean, there'd be like 47 jerseys everywhere, and I'd be like, damn, that kind of looks like my number. Kind of. It's like, you know, if everybody could just, like, cross it up, but I'm just being funny. But I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. What do you have to plug? I mean, talk about you do your podcast with Pat. What else you got going on?
Yeah, sure, man. I mean, well, once COVID hit, so I had done some things in the past with Pat McAfee, and I think most people know who Pat is. If they don't, Colts punter and huge personality, great, very, very talented, and actually a great guy, and just got married this past weekend. We started right when COVID hit. I remember I sent a text to him, hey, man, we should do something like some kind of show or something, because we've done stuff in the past. He's like, all right, let's do it. And he set it up. He has full studio in Indy, and 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, on YouTube Live, 1 Eastern, we do where Pat and I just go back and forth. And it's actually kind of looks like a real show, because he has a full-blown studio, and the guys have graphics, and we have guests on. And we've had Nick Mangold call in. We've had a lot of different guests. And it's just a fun back-and-forth show. And once, like, September hits and football starts, we're most likely going to go 5 days a week and revamp it a little bit and change things just to even make it better. But it's been fun. I've been doing my own podcast for a while, but I've been, as you know, booking people is not easy. You got to hustle. You got to be on people, man.
Let's see. Hey, he hasn't blocked my number yet. It didn't go straight to voicemail. Awesome. Cool. I'm still in the game, baby.
Yeah, so I haven't done one in actually a while, which is just dumb of me because anyone knows with podcasting, like consistency is the key if you want to build an audience. And so I have not been up on that, but I'm still going to continue that. I just, yeah, in the process of figuring out guests and getting guys on and getting time situated. But then, yeah, I've worked as a color analyst for college games over the last couple of years too. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if games happen, if they're going to send crews to do games, they'll do remotely. They don't know no one knows anything right now in the beginning of August. So we'll see, man. But I'll definitely, the main thing I do right now is McAfee and Hawk Sports Talk is what that show's called. It's actually the most like fun show that I've done. It's the most comfortable I feel going back and forth with him because Pat is a complete jackass in a good way. In a great way to where I like our banter back and forth. It's just fun and it's easy. And he's a super, super talented guy. And all of his guys that work for him are very talented. So I'm lucky to do it. And I hope to continue it for a long time.
Yeah. It's fun kind of like controlling your own deal. You know, it's like you and him can work together and do it. And like anymore with like YouTube Live, you don't need some corporate overlord to get on the air and get your opinions out and book guests. I mean, I literally bootstrapped this entire website, me, Mark Givler. I mean, you know, we're two guys that we've been in like the message board industry I've been in it for like 7-8 years just because I did it to sell, you know, commercial insurance. And I picked up a ton of clients doing it. But then finally I was like, I should just make my own site, you know, and we did. And it's been, despite having like legendary difficulty on Halo, essentially where it's like COVID, no football, no recruiting camps, like we've had an unbelievable launch. I mean, like our fans love it. People love our gear. You know, we have like SWO shirts out there. People are like, when do I get my, how can I order my SWO gear? How can I wear my Buckeye Scoop stuff? Like I put Scoop logo on everything because you got to rock your brand, man. It's like at some point it's like, it's more fun to rock your brand than someone else's brand. And our brand's strong. So you guys are always welcome. You know, obviously I don't have nearly the appeal you do, but I'm always welcome if you ever want to reciprocate. But I really appreciate you, man. You're a legend. You're humble. You always put 3 plates on both sides on the hammer front row, like every day after practice. So
yeah, I need to get a hammer row in my house.
I'm shocked that you don't have one in your studio. I mean, that was like death, taxes, and AJ on the hammer front row, 3 plates, maybe 4. Maybe 5. Like,
you know what? You reminded me of something. That's something I need. I don't have that right now in my basement. I need that. But you're right with your website and everything you're doing. I mean, I realize that now that I live in Dublin in Ohio, and I mean I grew up in Ohio, but I didn't understand. I don't think until I got out of college, like the following that Ohio State has, the amount of people like everywhere you go in the world basically that have ties to Ohio State. Like everyone you meet, it seems like they're like, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Ohio. Oh, actually, yeah, my dad actually went to Ohio State. Cool. Oh, you went to Ohio State? And there's always connections. And people just can't get enough stuff about Ohio State football, especially. So I think it's awesome what you're doing. I think there's a huge market there for that where you get to talk to guys like I love hearing stuff like you mentioned all my former teammates. Some of them I haven't seen in a while, haven't had a chance to talk to. So yeah, I can watch you talk to them and they can help me remember some of the stories that I sometimes think they just, they're out of my mind or I didn't think they were a big deal. And then you hear them again, you're like, oh, that was amazing. And the best part is the majority of these stories have Bobby Carpenter at the center of them. That's my favorite.
Yes, they do. Absolutely. Bobby
loves that. I don't think he has a problem with that.
Oh my God. So I'll leave with 2 things. We're gonna do one last Bobby story since we're Bobby centric at this moment. 2005 Penn State bus trip.
Oh yeah.
Landed in Harrisburg, and I always felt like a G because like me and Ted were the 2 young guys on bus 1. So yeah, because I'm sitting up. I usually sit up front with like Nick and Robbie and whoever, and there's like it's like the worst weather. It was like a hurricane, and then this tropical depression. Something impeded us from landing in State College, so we have to land in Harrisburg. And like poor Bob Tucker's like dialing up buses, and hey, you got to reroute the bus to State College. Like we can't land. There's some storm cell that will die if we land in. So we have to land in Harrisburg. We gotta get these buses, and like we get off the plane, get on these buses, and then we pull up to this gate. And there's nobody there to open this gate to let us out. So we're like stuck in the airport. We're sitting there for like, 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever. And our boy Bobby is like, I thought we were the class of college football. He's like, I thought And I was like, oh my God. I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is going to end well. And then Tress, you take him there. You're probably sitting closer to Bobby, but you see Tress come back.
He was, but Coach Tressel, by the way, he always sat in the very front with his wife next to him too. His wife was always on the bus too. But yes, I was sitting directly behind Bobby. I watched this whole thing play out. So yeah, you can continue. It was the best.
Yeah. So actually, you take it because you probably had a better view. Because I was like laying in like the seat, like probably second or third from the front. Because nobody wants to sit like the very front next to the coaches. But you know, when everybody's in kind of their own row, like I was a young guy, so I was kind of forced to sit not in the back because that's where the cool kids sit. I was like young guy sitting in the front, and so Tress like jumps over me and Dadish because we're like laying across the rows, and like he's just like, you know, like Dominique Moceanu, he just dives over both of us like a ninja, and then he gets back to Bobby, and you're probably sitting there. How was Tress then?
What do you know from that?
I heard it all. I took my headphones off. I had to. I was like, I know all of it. I was like,
we saw Coach Tressel make his way back, and he never walked back ever. Like that may be in 4 years, that may be the only time I ever saw him walk back, and you could tell he wasn't like running. He was very Coach Tressel, like very calm, but you just knew like, okay, something's up. He's coming back here for somebody, and there's only been one person who has been yelling very loud for the last 2 hours. So
oh my God!
I ducked into the corner of my seat, and you're
like this.
Yep.
I'm sleeping, and then all of a sudden, Coach Tress says, I think that might have been one of like 2 times I heard him say the F word, and he threatened to send Bobby home, or I forget what his exact verbiage was, but it was not pleasant. I mean, Tress was not happy, you know, because you know it's like there's nothing we can really do when the gate can't open and Bob Tucker's wearing people out, but yeah, he blasted Bobby for that one, and I was like.
We were loving it, man. We
thought it was the funniest.
We still talk about it with Bobby all the time. And when I was with, like, my parents know, my brother, like everyone knows, because whenever I just saw Bobby a couple of days ago, but like everyone knows, like it was classic Coach Tressel just walking back real calmly and just looked at. Oh my gosh, like
Bobby, if you don't shut the F up, I'm gonna like send you home. Or I forget what the.
I don't even know if he said that. I think he just said, "Bobby, shut the F up," like right in his face, and we were like. I was like, we were all just sitting right behind him. We're like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, but we don't want to be roped into, like, we don't want Coach Tressel to think that we're involved in this in any way. And then Bobby kind of spooked for a little bit. For a few minutes, Bobby was spooked, but then he went right back to it. He needed his food, man. He needed his night before the game meal.
It was like hitting the dog with the shock collar, and then he, like, a half hour later, he goes and takes another shit in your house or something. Like, but that was amazing. Yeah, and now that we're on the bus ride, because I know I'm trying to get you up, but I got the other bus ride memory that I'll forever, ever love is I don't know where we were going to. It might have been that. I don't know if it was that game, but you know, we had like a little like DVD player with the little TVs, and your boy, my favorite, Nick. What movie did I watch, Nick? Oh, let's put on Boondock Saints. Yeah, and we've got like Coach Tressel, Ellen Tressel, Bowles. I don't think Haycock even rode bus 1. I think he was like a bus 2 guy because he was like workman, like whatever. Tucker, but like, dude, we're watching Boondock Saints, and you know, Coach Tress doesn't swear. You know, Ellen's prim and proper in her sweater vest too. And if people haven't seen Boondock Saints, it is one of the most insane, crazy, graphic, you know, profanity-filled movies of all time. And like, I'm sitting there watching this, and like Tress and Ellen are like 3 rows up from me, and I'm like, oh my God, Nick. I was like, of all the movies you could put on, it's like, like, and I'm looking at Bowles is like dying laughing because, you know, I can't even say that what they say on this podcast, or all my sponsors will cancel me. It's just like, you've seen it, but do you remember that?
Yeah, I don't think they finished the movie. I think we had to change the movie because. Yeah, I think it just got so awkward with Coach Tressel and Ellen up there, especially with Ellen there.
Oh yeah,
Coach Tressel had a real good way of like he would never have to yell, but he would just make you feel. It's like disappointing your dad. Like that's how you always felt, like, especially with Coach Tressel. Like he could just look at you and make you like, oh man, I'm such a piece of garbage. Like, what am I thinking having this movie? I'm like, so yeah, I don't know what they end up putting on, but I'm pretty sure that got cut off probably halfway through.
Dude, that was great. Last thing, I swear to God, last thing. Michigan in the middle of the season this year, mid-October, like October 24th. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, is there any reason why they made it October 24th? Like, if
I
you're
don't know. Like that's the
just
thing I'm
make it the
wondering.
last game. If you're gonna,
Yeah.
we're doing all Big Ten. Like everyone said, they're gonna make it the first game. Maybe okay, I'm all for that. If you want to make it game one, I'm cool. Or do you want to make it the last game? I'm cool. But why in the middle? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's how I was. I was like, especially after yesterday with Harbaugh and Days dust up, and
Yep.
I'm like, man, if I'm the commissioner, I'm like, let's move that one right to the front, get everybody excited. We'll at least get that game in. It's not going to be, middle of the year, COVID, everything shut down, the apocalypse, whatever. But like putting it like in the middle, it's like there's like 4 games or 3 games afterwards. I'm just like, it's just that literally made no sense. But yeah, I don't know. It's the Big Ten, baby. That's how we do it. We don't, it's like the SEC had their schedule out 2 weeks ago. They stopped testing their guys probably. They're going to be balling. And then, like, we're like, well, we're going to put our schedule out. Well, we might not have football. Well, I'm like, the SEC ain't stopping, dude. I was like, we need to get some gusto, man. Because, I mean, we got, especially like Ohio State, like, we have a returning Heisman favorite quarterback. Like, we don't want to waste that. I'm like, I don't want to waste that. Are you crazy? It's like, those types of talents, I mean, we've been getting them often, but, you want to take advantage of Wyatt Davis and Justin Fields and all those guys. What are your thoughts on the team this year? Like, I mean, it's national championship or bust, right?
Yeah, I think it always is. And that's the great thing about, like, if you're Ryan Day and you're the head coach at Ohio State, like, especially now with all the success Coach Tressel had, Urban had, now Ryan Day takes over, like, you can't lose a game. Like, you can't lose any games. That's the standard, and that's a great thing, but it's also a lot of pressure, a lot of things to think about. And I think Urban even said in one of his press conference when he was stepping down, basically when he announced he said it's so fragile. Like, everything is so fragile, meaning like the ball bounces this way, a penalties called on this guy. Like, so many things can change from good to bad. And I think that's what it is, man. That's absolutely what Ohio State's at this year. You have Justin Fields. First off, I remember doing radio leading up to last season, and I was like, man, I hope Justin Fields is amazing. I think he is a great player, but let's pump the brakes a little bit on these expectations. Like, people are saying this guy's going to come in and win the Heisman and do all this. And to Justin Fields' credit, that dude exceeded all expectations. That dude played out of his mind all year long. So you would think, okay, he's just gonna grow and capitalize on what he did last year when he has another year in the system. So I think they should be rolling, man. Their defense looked great last year. They make the scheme change and let the guys play, basically, and let the athletes kind of keep everything in front of them and run the ball. I think it's awesome. I think their coaches are amazing. I love the new coaches that they have even brought on. Al Washington, the linebacker coach, I did early on in COVID. I did like a Zoom with the linebackers there. It was really cool to see how much they're actually getting done over Zoom. I thought it was like, oh man, these like virtual meetings, that's gonna be garbage. You can't do it. And then it's pretty legit, man. It's like they're there. I mean, nothing is as good as in person, but how these coaches run it. Washington, Madison was on there. I think these guys are doing things the right way. I did another Zoom with remember Rob Harley?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Linebacker coach at Pitt. I did one with them, and I'm like, man, you guys are figuring this out. Like, I was impressed. I was glad I went on and did those because they're getting way more done than I thought they would be able to just over Zoom. But man, Ohio State's loaded. They're always loaded, but I think this year is another level. When you have a guy like Justin Fields, who, I mean, if Joe Burrow doesn't just play completely out of his mind, he could have won the Heisman last year. But Justin Fields had an unbelievable season. I think they have talent all around them. And I think as long as the O-line holds up, which I think they will be fine, things are going to be great. Ohio State should be rolling, man.
Yeah, well, dude, I really appreciate your time. Obviously, I've conveyed enough how I think about you. You're a great family man. You're a great teammate, a great captain, a great influence on me personally on how to say later. You don't have to be the first guy to dinner during training camp. You and Schleg's about the last guys every time. Because you guys would work out after practice. Like, it wasn't enough for you guys. And it's like everyone else is dying. And, like, you probably were just still in that, like, because that's what you do. But, I noticed that. And then I started staying. And then I started to grab guys to stay. And it's like, that's the culture that you set the tone for. And, dude, I'm always grateful for you guys. I apologize that we weren't better on offense some of those games. So I apologize. We did it in Notre Dame, but we should have been doing that all year. But, dude, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I hope you'll be back on soon. And if you ever need anything from me or any one of my teammates with Buckeye Scoop, let me know. We've got 9 guys on staff. So we cover a lot of ground. But I appreciate you, brother. Go get your workout in and have a good day.
I appreciate it, man. You know, one thing about my workout, when I would do that, when Bobby and I and Shakes would stay after practice and just because we wanted to, that's how we felt best. And that's how at least for me, how I stayed healthy, I feel like, and didn't let little things creep up on me. It was always just worked out. I think my freshman year, we'd walk into the training table later, and I don't know who it was. Some older guy was like, "Oh, you guys just work out?" And we're like, "Yeah." Like, "You do that pretty much every day?" We're like, "Yeah." Like, "Yeah, you won't be doing that in another year or two." I remember when I was a freshman, and I remember that stuck with me. That pissed me off. I'm like, "Who's this dude?" And I would have remembered if I don't know who it was, but that stuck with me forever. It still sticks with me. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, no. And so, yeah, that's why not a big reason, but if there was ever a day you felt like not doing something or you felt like you were dinged up, I'd remember those little comments like that.
And again, I'm not prolonging, but before Texas in 05, I looked in the gym on Friday. You're getting this insane pump. You know, you're doing dips, you know, weighted dips, like all this crazy stuff. And then it was a night game, and you guys like worked out in the hotel. And I'm like, before the game, and I was like, they're cyborgs. They're machines. They are not from this earth. And then then you went out and played like just out of this world good against Texas, and I was like, he's a different animal, dude. And that's why you're top 5 pick, bro. Appreciate you. So it's all love. You are a member of the Scoop World Order, whether you like it or not, man. You got my army behind you now, my friend. So I appreciate you. We're going to be tuning into your podcast, and thank you again, my man.
Hey, thank you, man. You're doing good stuff. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, brother.